Welcome, everybody, to the Grn Mchn Multisports Ask the Coach Thursday night session. We're happy to have you on board. I'm Coach Dan.
I'm Coach Rob.
Cool. So we're just going to walk you through a couple things as we open up here as people start coming on in. Don't forget to ask those questions in the chat bar, and we'll be happy to talk about anything that you want to. We're going to start by talking about a couple of the links that are down in the description box below. So right below our video, whether you're watching on your phone, PC, tablet, whatever, you can look down below and see a couple of links down there. One of them is our website, so definitely poke around there, see a little bit about who we are, what we do. If you want to learn a little bit more about me and Coach Rob, that's both in the description box down below, and we have a little section there on our website about us. So check that out. I'm in the Richmond, Virginia area, and Rob's up in the Buffalo, New York area. So we cover a lot of the East Coast over here. And we do a lot of fun racing in that area. We've also got some coaching available through Training Peaks, so that's worthwhile to check out as well. And if you're not interested in coaching services, we do have a lot of add-on services. This time of year, we tend to work with a lot of people on their swimming. We have swim form analysis, all kinds of stuff, heart rate testing. So even if you just want to take a couple steps in the right direction, those are a couple good things to check out. And of course, we put a little pamphlet together here. It's a little slideshow. Just a couple things about who we are, what we do. We use Training Peaks, a couple of our philosophies, and all kinds of good stuff like that. So lots of stuff for you to browse around with. Just check that out in the description box down below. And while you're down there, you might as well click that thumbs up button. That'll help YouTube share us out and get more people involved, get more questions flowing. Tonight, we do have a subscriber-only feature on. So if you're trying to ask questions and you can't find the chat bar, just make sure that you check around down there. And live chat is reserved for subscribers only. So once you subscribe to the channel, within a minute or two, you should be able to ask your questions. And we'll cover pretty much anything today. We do a host of different series around here. We do topics that we prepared ahead of time. We do interviews. We have a couple other things in mind if the channel grows down the road. And one of our sessions throughout the month is just an Ask the Coach, where we just have an open floor discussion, and anything that you want to talk about is fair game. So if anybody out there is doing any racing coming up, we'd love to hear about it. Do you have any racing coming up this weekend or in the next month or two? Tell us about it in the chat bar down below. How you doing today, Rob?
Not too bad. I got no races coming up, but might actually start getting back into the training shape. We just bought a treadmill and had a fun time getting that down into our basement. But once get that assembled, with weather changing here up in Buffalo, be able to start doing some running and not have to worry about the elements.
That's awesome. I had one of my friends just reach out. He's kind of been taking some time off over the pandemic and whatnot. Did an Ironman a couple of years ago. He said, I'm turning 35 and I want to run 35 miles. So I want to start working on that over the next year. So that's pretty exciting to hear people setting some goals, getting ready. That's a really big thing this time of year. With the holidays coming up and the new year right around the corner, lots of good stuff as far as training for the next season. So I know that I've got a race on the schedule for next year, at least one that I know of, maybe two, actually two. One in the mid-season and one towards the end of the season. I'll be doing a half marathon towards the end of the season and a half Ironman about mid-season. What's your schedule looking like?
Yeah, I definitely got to get running again because I deferred my Richmond half marathon registration from this year, and hopefully actually be able to come down and race it next year.
Awesome. Yeah, that's going to be a good time. That's always a great way to close out the season and get yourself ready to start resting for the next season. We did a show a couple weeks ago about how to take the most advantage of your off season. So if you have not seen that show, definitely go back and check that out. It goes over a lot of topics about how we work with our athletes to set them up for success in the next season. And even though we're pretty far through what we call the off season or the hibernation phase, there's still some time to shut things down and let your body and mind rejuvenate before getting up and moving for the next year. This is definitely a time that you want to think about what your plans are for the summer leading into the fall, maybe even the early spring. And if you're interested in doing some racing, start getting that plan together. And if you need any help, we're here to help through questions or training plans or whatever it may be. Another thing to keep in mind is we do put shows together about specific topics. So like we were just mentioning, we had one about the off season and whatnot. So if there's a specific topic you'd like us to do a more in-depth show on instead of just this Q&A type thing, then definitely shoot us a message. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, all over the place. We got a website you can fill out a questionnaire. So just get those questions over to us and we're happy to prepare something. I did a little bit of Zwifting today. That's been a little while since I've done that. That was pretty fun.
I haven't touched Zwift in quite some time, but maybe if I get my butt running again, get it back onto the bike and can join you for some of those sessions.
Yeah, speaking of running and Zwift, one of our interviews is with the first person to run an ultra marathon on Zwift, so that was pretty cool. He ran, I forget what it was, 50 kilometers, I believe it was, on the treadmill.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. Big ultra runner. We did an interview last week with a very speedy age grouper, Kevin Wright. So if you haven't checked that one out, go back through the channel and check that out. That's definitely worth looking at. Really seeing the approach that he takes to his training. And we actually surprised him and brought his coach on without him knowing. So that was fun. Gave him a little ribbing. And so it's good to get both sides of the ball on that one. That was pretty cool. Anybody out in chat, if you don't have a specific question yet, just let us know where you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear about that. Like we said, we're based along the East Coast here, so wherever you are, we want to know where we're reaching out to. All right, we've got our first question down here. We appreciate you reaching out. This question says, hey there, thank you for being here for us. Would like to ask the best way to train and lose weight about 15 pounds or so over 4 to 6 months in preparation for a 70.3. That's awesome. I'm sure a lot of people are kind of in that same situation. Just being in the off season right now or kind of shutting things down for the year, it's okay to let that weight creep in. And it's definitely okay to not be in your prime fighting shape right now. I know that we almost encourage a little bit of weight gain in the off season because it's just not sustainable to be at that peak, really lean fitness like you would be for your race and like you'd probably want to be as you get closer to your 70.3. You want to talk a little bit about this one, Rob?
Yeah, so I guess one of the big things is, we try not to focus with our training specifically on losing weight, but like you said, as you get back into things, it's likely you're going to start to slim down a little bit. You're going to get back to that racing weight. We kind of like to do that more naturally than trying to force it and getting yourself into a calorie deficit, because that can have some negative impacts on your training.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. You don't want to get to the point where you're so focused on this race weight that you've just kind of pulled a magical number out of the air that might make you feel happy to be at, but who knows if that's your optimal or not, especially if you're just getting into this journey for the first time, getting ready for that 70.3 or whatnot. I'm not sure if you've done any before, but maybe it's your first one. So definitely don't get caught up on that weight. Like Coach Rob is saying, just kind of let your body kind of equalize out where it's going to be. Focus on the training and getting stronger. And we do a ton of tracking with our athletes, even beyond what Training Peaks allows. We have files built up for all our athletes where we track all their similar workouts so we can compare those and just look for progress in that and focus on more of the process goals than the outcome goals. I know we all want to go fast and get lean and whatnot, but if that's your driving force, then you tend to overdo things, I think, and kind of set yourself up for injury or maybe not make the best decisions along the path. So hopefully that's answering your question a little bit there. You want to add anything?
It would be a good topic for us to bring somebody with a stronger background in nutrition on, and something we can look into having as one of our more focused topic shows is nutrition, where we can bring kind of a pro in, because Dan and I can only provide so much information before we need to even turn to the people who have the background in that.
That's right. There are people with degrees in becoming dietitians and whatnot. So those are definitely the specialists you want to. We've definitely got suggestions and recommendations as far as fueling for workouts and just kind of daily life, but not really our role, I don't think, to really be developing like eating plans or anything like that. Definitely just want to have that well-balanced diet and your body will kind of regulate where it is. Speaking of one of our prior shows, we actually did a whole setup where how you can plan your season and plan your training around that. So if you're not interested in coaching, you can at least get an idea how we set things up. But we always work backwards from that big race. So we put the big race on the calendar, backwards design the whole season, make sure you're leaving enough time to have some training gains in between your tests and races. and then give yourself time towards the end of each training block to recover, absorb all that training, and then move on to the next one. So that's kind of how we do things around here. And you'll see a lot of that in our pamphlet over here that I'll share again. This is down in the description box if you haven't seen it yet. A lot of people focus on the training when you really want to focus on the nutrition and rest, race fueling, pacing, mental fitness. Those are all the pieces that come together to help you have a successful race when you get out on the course. And a lot of that stuff we were talking about as far as season planning goes can be found with the periodization. You can kind of see we do some building, take a little rest, do a race or a test, see how the fitness is going, do some building again, take some rest, and then we look to build a little bit with each piece. Yeah, we definitely are happy to help however we can. If that didn't answer your question, just go ahead and write another one. No problem at all, but hopefully that at least answered what you were thinking. And where are you tuning in from? Let's see, we got a couple other comments in here. Courtney saying she's in Richmond. I noticed I slimmed down just by following my workouts and eating healthy. That's right. So the body's always looking for whatever is the most comfortable or streamlined. So if you're training and putting the work in, then there's a good chance you're going to end up where you need to be instead of chasing some random number that may or may not be where you actually need to be. And definitely track that over time. Season to season, you get a feel for, maybe I got a little bit too lean one race. Maybe I get a little bit too heavy for this race. I know with my racing, if I'm doing a flat course, I'd rather have a couple extra pounds on and have a little extra power in my legs for the bike because you're on the power all day out there. You don't have any hills to coast down or anything like that. And if I'm in a hilly race like Lake Placid, then I want to try and be as lean and strong as possible. So that's a really tricky balance sometimes. Tampa, Florida. I'm jealous of your weather right now, that's for sure. Unless you're in those
down there in a couple of weeks. Can't wait to get out of Buffalo, even though we're not having too much of a winter yet, but it'd be nice to get some sunshine.
Yeah, absolutely. Our weather can't make up its mind in Virginia. It's 40 degrees one night, 60 degrees the next, snow in one day, 70 the next day. It's ridiculous. They say around here, if you don't like the weather, just wait an hour. We can have 4 seasons of weather all within a week. Yeah, and then if we're talking about training blocks, a big thing that we focus on and what we really think the art of coaching is something called interplay, and that's the way that your workouts fit together. So it's not just a matter of I need to swim, bike, and run. It doesn't really matter how I do them. It tends to really matter how you stack them up, especially when you get into a little bit more intensity. Right now, people that are training are doing a lot of base building, so some really aerobic work, not a whole lot of recovery built in, but the sessions themselves are not going to beat you up too bad. When you start adding harder stuff, you also need to balance that out with some really easy stuff. And a lot of people that are having trouble with that weight loss, they'll want to do everything so hard, and they're not taking that rest and doing those easy days, which is when your body makes the adjustments. So make sure you're doing the easy stuff as well. And of course, if you don't have any training zones, that's something you want to think about as well. We try and keep it as simple as possible with our training. We have 5 zones, as you can see right there. We've got the recovery zone, which is more of like a flushing type thing to clear all the work we've been doing and help you prepare for your next workouts that are coming up. We've got our aerobic zone, which is where most people are spending the majority of their time right now if they're racing in the summer or fall or like a late spring race. And then we've got some tempo work, which is where you live and breathe if you're doing a 70.3. That's race pace for 70.3, or to avoid that word pace, more like a race energy output. And then threshold, and then some really hard intervals with best sustainable effort. So anything over threshold, more like max effort type stuff. So if you don't know how to set those zones up, definitely reach out to us. We've got a lot of testing we can do, and we can at least get you on the right direction with that and kind of teach you how to use those zones. Because we like to think about training and exercising as 2 different things. It's great to be active and exercising, but if you want to make fitness gains around racing, you really need to have a plan and be exercising with a goal. Then it becomes training. Here we go. This says, how can you balance following your training plans and your individual goals, but also finding support or ways to work out with others? That's a good one. I need a breath here. You want to start with that one, Rob?
Yeah, no problem. I got some thoughts on that because it's especially in the winter. I think it becomes a bit easier for this because like how we do things is we're working in heart rate zones, and your pace at a certain heart rate zone or your power might not line up with somebody you want to be running with or biking with. So, I mean, right now, getting on the trainer, bringing trainer over to a buddy's house, having trainer parties. Even you can do it virtually with Zwift now. Running on the treadmill with somebody, next to you. There's that opportunity where you can each do your own thing, but you're kind of suffering together. But I guess something that you had started and really down in Richmond, it's really great is, going to do a long run or a workout at a track with a group of people where everybody can run at their own pace, but you're going to be running by them every once in a while and be able to encourage them. So you're out there doing the same thing, but you're also able to focus on your own race or your own workout.
Yeah, we've had times where we've had people that came back from a big race and they're on a recovery run at the track, and they just wanted to be out there with the group. So they're doing that while somebody else is doing, they're in their build phase. So they're doing some track intervals while somebody else, like a lot of people right now, have no business being on the track this time of year. If you don't have a race in the next couple months, you should not be doing any track work or anything like that. I've got another story about that, but I'll get to it in a second. You just want to make sure that, you're doing what you need to do at the right time in the season. And we'd have people doing just straight aerobic runs just for time. And we've had people doing intervals, other people doing recovery work. Some people just out there to hang out and sit on the sidelines because they're on a recovery week. So just find ways to be creative with it. I just did a Zwift party today. So we had a couple athletes meet up and rode together. They've got a feature on Zwift where if you make your own meetup, you can ride at your own pace and everybody sticks together. So even though you're right next to each other in there and you're miles away in the real world, it's all good. But I coach master swimming as well. I had an athlete start cramping up in the middle of a workout this Monday, so this week, middle of December, and they don't have a race for who knows how long, but they just started up with a new training plan, and they were on the track, and this is not one of our athletes, by the way, and they were on the track, and they showed up doing 200 repeats in the middle of December and cramping up like you wouldn't believe in their first week of training. But there's a time and a place. Don't be that person. You want to save that stuff for when you're in more race prep phases and things like that. We have periodization and we set up our seasons that way. So once you get closer to the races and you start adding some intensity in, after you've built that really good base, that's when you can start doing that kind of stuff. Now is not the time for most people unless you're doing a very early race coming up. Like our guest last week, Kevin, he's doing a full marathon in the next month. So he would be doing stuff like that now. But most people should not be this time of year. Courtney says, I forgot about track workouts. I never thought I would say I miss a track workout, but I do. That's right. They're a lot of fun. And we've got a track near us. We can close the fences and let our dogs run around. So that's kind of cool. But to jump back to that original question, it's definitely important to have that balance. Especially if you've got a race in July or August or who knows when, and you're starting to train in December. You can't just put your nose to the grindstone and go all the way through. You got to have a plan to kind of step back away at some point. For some of our athletes that, we have people qualify for Kona a year ahead of time. They don't have to be ready till October. We'll build in a section throughout the summer where, they're taking a couple of weeks off to just completely recharge and get back to being a normal human being again. And then get back to the training there. But that's a planned break. And usually if you work those in, you don't end up with an unplanned break, which would be caused by like an injury or, if you have any kind of chemical imbalances from just kind of doing too much and not resting enough, like low iron or anything like that. The track workouts were a whole lot of fun, that's for sure. I would love to do some right now, but it's not the time or the place for me.
Yeah, I'd definitely probably wind up injuring myself if I went out and tried to do some speed work right off the bat. I'm just looking forward to getting back, putting in some base miles, rebuilding some fitness gradually and seeing where I go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a good time of year to do that. And, a lot of times we talk about those recovery runs. That's another great opportunity to just kind of get out and walk with somebody. We call them recovery runs, but most people are walking during that. So it's a really good time to train with a partner you normally couldn't, or just go walk somewhere and kind of take in what's around you and just enjoy being able to be active and be healthy and be outside. And that's always good stuff as well.
And I think another thing I just thought of was never wound up putting this into effect yet, but my wife's been she's a marathon runner and has been staying in shape. But there's been times where we've tried to set up like a half marathon during COVID, where I was actually out on the bike and actually being in a mobile aid station for her, but able to support her by just cruising along on the bike while she's out running.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. And actually, last week our guest did that as well. He followed this like 300-mile path, and his wife rode her bike next to him and carried everything and supported him the whole way. And they do like 25 to 30 miles a day, and then sleep in a hotel, and then pick up the next day and keep going. So they got to spend a lot of time together, and I think they both really enjoyed it. So even if you have got somebody in your life, like a kid or a spouse or somebody in your family that just likes to ride bikes and not necessarily run, that's a great way to do things. That's a great point there. Any way you can involve other people is great. I've got my one buddy in town. He's the track coach at the high school and one of the fastest runners in the Ironman circuit and whatnot. And he's always got his kids riding bikes out there with him. It's fun to see. They're just flying down the road. Cool. So definitely, if you have any more questions, put those out in the chat. They keep us rolling on these Q&A type days. Anything at all that's on your mind, open floor. We'll try our best to answer it. If we can't, we'll dig around for something. Even if it's just something cool you want to share, or something that's coming up you want us to look into, like a race or a race course, it's all fair game. If you have that 70.3 course and you have any questions about it, we're happy to pull it up and kind of talk through anything on there if you'd like. So what kind of workout did you get in today with that treadmill? Have you fired it up and used it yet?
No, still in pieces. We got the deck downstairs and we'll slowly build it, but looking forward to getting it up and running and getting some base fitness back. I've been lifting a little bit. We've kind of built a home gym since we bought our house back in May, and have a weight set, have our bike set up, and now adding the treadmill. All we really got to do is put in a pool in the basement and we'd be all set. But
there you go. You can do your own little indoor triathlon. That's cool. You might be able to do that in your backyard from what I've heard about your flooding issues.
Yeah, it's a puddle right now.
That's a pain in the butt. But it sounds like you got to work out just getting that thing in the house.
Yep.
Okay, we got another question in here. We appreciate that. On uphill 70.3 with headwind of 35 miles per hour, how do you decide to sit versus aero versus stand? Excellent. So a lot of different variables in there, and racing is really just a combination of learning how to deal with the variables. And a lot of times, especially when you get towards the faster and faster end, the people that come to the finish line first are the people that have dealt with the obstacles the best throughout the day. So when you talk about a 70.3 or an Ironman, there's the planned things like this, which is great that you're thinking about. But there's also the stuff you don't plan for, like maybe a bike crash or a flat tire or going off course or dropping nutrition. So definitely good to think about as much as you possibly can and have a plan ready for it. I'd say that the best way to deal with this is I'm going to go back to this slide right here. Training zones. So we do a lot of heart rate training with our athletes, and I guess there's kind of two parts to your question here. The wind is one thing versus what position you want to be in, but then I guess also the effort as well. So I'll start with the effort. If you're racing a 70.3, we're going to expect you to be in our zone 2. And of course, every coaching system has their own set of zones and whatnot. So we have our way of calculating ours, and our workouts are written accordingly to it. So you couldn't necessarily take our stuff and apply it to a different plan. It just wouldn't make sense because our zone 2 might be someone else's zone 1 or something. So keep that in mind as I talk about this. That's just what we call the tempo efforts. So if you're cruising along 70.3 at a zone 2 or a tempo effort and you're coming up on a hill, typically your heart would start going up. Your heart rate would be going up as you start climbing that hill. So you'd want to manage that the best you can. And a good thing to think about ahead of time is your gearing on your bike. You want to make sure that you can shift down enough to not have to jack your heart rate through the roof. And you definitely want the cadence to suffer and drop a little bit before you start letting that heart rate climb through the roof, because once it does, it's going to want to go right back up there again. And if you're climbing that hill, there's a good chance you may not be able to sit or go aero. especially if it's going to really kind of strain your legs or anything like that. A lot of times it's just better to get up and maybe sit up, take some time to stretch and drink a little bit. Fueling's super important. So fuel a little bit going up that hill. One of the best rules of thumb you can do in a 70.3 in Ironman is take a look around. If you see somebody standing up on their bike and climbing up the hill super hard and sprinting up there, that's probably not what you want to be doing. You want to see what other people are doing and pretty much do the opposite for the most part. Sit back, relax a little bit, keep that heart rate in check. If you've got a power meter on your bike, we teach our athletes what's an acceptable range to bump that power up, what's an acceptable range to let the heart rate drift up a little bit. So as long as you keep all those things in mind and you can kind of level the course, you can deal with any situation that you come up with. Wind, heart rate, hills, whatever, heat even. We've got strategies for that. So definitely all kinds of stuff to think about there. Did I miss anything, Rob?
I guess personal preference probably goes into play a little bit too. If you're way more comfortable sitting aero while you're climbing, stay aero because you're going to be a little bit smaller. And if you're dealing with the headwind, you're not going to have to battle it as much. But personally for myself, I like sitting up when I'm climbing, not really standing. I like to kind of find that right cadence where I don't really have to mash the gears, stand up and kind of burn a match trying to get up a hill. But definitely for me, sitting up is a little bit more comfortable, and I'll take the being a little bit more comfortable than trying to save a couple seconds by trying to stay aero and trying to beat the wind a little bit that way.
Yeah, that's a really good point because, if you're uncomfortable on the bike, that's going to probably translate into a slower run than usual. So if you give up a couple seconds on the bike to be a little bit more comfortable, you're usually going to be rewarded with running towards your potential a little bit more, I believe. And I guess it also depends on what kind of hill you're talking about. If it's just a gradual uphill, aero is not a big deal. But if it's a big old hill where you got to really gear down and grind up that thing, probably the wind is probably going to be blocked by the hill for the most part, or it's going to be at your back. So that kind of situation would probably not be too common, I wouldn't think. But I would probably just sit up, to be honest, and kind of shake things out a little bit. I think that's the advantage of a course with rolling hills or even some major hills as opposed to a flat course is I've done races like Eagleman and the same course as Maryland Ironman, and you're just in the aero bars all day holding the same wattage pretty much the whole way through. And when you get off that bike, it doesn't matter how fit or how fast you went, you're pretty much locked up because it's just the same position for hours on end. So being able to get up and stretch a little bit can go a long way in a race. You always want to be thinking that you still got to run. So I know that everybody wants a really fast bike split. We spend a lot of money on these bikes and spend a lot of time training on them. But at the end of the day, you got to put all three pieces together and the run comes last. So a lot of the decisions you make on the race course have to be mindful of the fact that you still have a run to do, and a pretty long one if you're talking about 70.3. So hopefully that clears things up a little bit or gives you a better idea of what you could do out there. The easy solution would be to tuck in behind another athlete, but we all know that's not allowed. If you're on a training ride, definitely let your partner go ahead, but in the race, you got to do it on your own. That's becoming more and more of an issue these days, it seems like. Trying to cram so many people on a course that there's nowhere for anybody to go.
Yep.
That's why it seems like they're trying to split up a lot of the world championships and do a 2-day event, kind of space things out a little bit, give people some more time. I know watching a report one year, somebody really broke down a lot of statistics about Kona, and they're saying, the swim times only varied by this much range, and even if you did a time trial start and put all these people on the bike course, they would literally fill up the entire 112-mile stretch and not be able to space out enough to be draft legal. So it was like they just put so many people on the course, it's not even possible not to draft. And I know from my experiences out there, I've gotten passed by groups of 30 or 40 guys, and it looks like a road race. So that's not fun for anybody. I guess we're getting kind of off topic on that one, but who knows? Any more questions out there, feel free to share them with us. We'd love to know which race you're doing, which 70.3 that is, if it's one on the Ironman circuit or maybe a local race to you. See if we have any experience with that race. We might be able to address your question even better. there's Coach Rob and his racing glory right there.
Back in the day, it's been quite some time. But looking forward to kind of easing back into things, maybe getting back to it in 2022.
Oh, yeah. That's for sure. All right, so we will wait a couple more minutes, see if any more questions roll in. If that's the case, we'll dive into them. If not, we'll probably start shutting this thing down. We're just here to answer whatever people want to talk about. Whatever that may be, we'll do the best we can to get some answers there.
Yeah, as Dan mentioned, if you're catching the show after we've done it, if you have questions, comments, drop a comment in the comment box, and we can maybe cover it in a future show. If it's something you want us to go more in depth in, we can definitely look at making that one of our focus topics. And like we've been saying, is we want to tailor the show to the audience. So, let us know what you want to hear about, what we can talk about, and we can really, really start to focus and, answer the questions that everyone has.
Yep. And to go along with that, there's a lot of the ways you can reach out to us. Email, website, Facebook, Instagram. I don't really use Twitter. I don't even know if you can message on Twitter. I'm too old to know about that. But I guess we've got one out there somewhere.
I'm
we got it all.
Sports news, so I don't know.
I guess we've got one out there. If you message us on Twitter, I probably won't get it. So try any of the others. That's why it's at the bottom of the list. Should probably just take it off. But it's out there. Oh, man, I'm showing my age now. It was funny. I'm a teacher, and we had Decades Day at school. And it was funny because all the teachers were wearing like 60s and 70s stuff, and all the kids were wearing 90s stuff. I guess that's going back now for them. That's what their oldies are.
So it seems as trends just keep rotating.
Yeah. I was listening to some oldies the other day, some Linkin Park.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, man. All righty. Well, I think we're going to start shutting this thing down. We appreciate people hanging out, bringing some questions. We do one of these about once a month. So if we haven't answered your question, reach out to us like Coach Rob was saying, or just pop back in on the next one and we'll be around. But subscribe to that channel so you don't miss our other stuff that we put out. Interviews, design topics, Q&As, got some other stuff planned for down the road. And we typically go live on Thursdays. So not every Thursday throughout the month, but at least a couple Thursdays every month. So make sure you hit that bell and you'll see it pop up and you can come on in and join us. And we do try to advertise out there as well. So if you follow our pages and our socials, you'll see it out there. But all righty, Coach Rob and I have been practicing this. And we're going to leave you with one big old high five and we're going to get out of here. It's been real, everybody. Later.
Have a good night, everyone.